Welcome to tonight's meeting of the Zoning Board of Adjustment of the Township of Union, which is being held pursuant to the Open Public Meeting Law, C-231 Laws of New Jersey, dated 1975. Notice of this meeting was advertised in the local source and/or the Star Ledger, the two newspapers of record, and notice has been posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building adjacent to the municipal clerk's office. Roll call.
Mr. Wiley.
Here.
Ms. Martins.
Here.
Mr. Bentavegan is absent. Ms. Scott.
Here.
Mr. Johnson.
Here.
Mr. McNeil.
Here.
Mr. Graves is absent. Ms. Ricketts.
Here.
And Mr. Champy.
Here. There being a quorum present, this meeting is now declared open. Mr. Manguso, are there any communications?
There are no communications, Mr. Chairman.
Hearing none, we can proceed with the meeting. Our first order of business this evening will be the adoption of a resolution for calendar number 3438, Jeb Foods LLC, located at 332 Indiana Street, Block 5808, lots 52 and 54. Applicant wished to upgrade and repair conjoined garages and subdivide his lots. At this time, board members, you've all had a chance to read the resolution. At this time, are there any board members that would like to comment and make changes or modifications to this resolution as it is written? Hearing none, may I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution?
Mr. Chairman, I move that this board adopt the resolution as read and modify it as accurately memorializing the previous findings of this board.
Second motion.
Roll call.
Mr. Wiley.
Yes.
Ms. Martins.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. McNeil.
Yes.
And Mr. Champy.
Yes. Our next order of business is calendar number 3441, Robin Fu, located at 281 through 283 Oswald Terrace, Block 5811, Lot 14. Applicant wishes to expand the nonconforming use to permit a parking lot at this dwelling.
Good evening, John Sullivan from the law office of Vastola.
Microphone.
I was just going to ask, which one do you want me at? Good evening, John Sullivan from the offices of Vastola and Sullivan, representing the applicant. The applicant is the owner of the property in question, 281, 283 Oswald Place. It's designated as Lot 14 in Block 5811, and it's located in the RB zoning district. The property is currently improved with a four-family dwelling, and that is a pre-existing non-conforming use in the zoning district. Right now, there is a not very good shaped driveway, gravel driveway on the right side of the property, and what we're proposing is to construct a 6-vehicle parking area on the left side of the dwelling, which is a nice big open area right there. We do require a D2 variance to expand a pre-existing non-conforming use, and there are several other existing variance conditions. With regard to the parking, we're required to have 7 spaces here. We're proposing 6, but we can certainly, and we had our engineer check on this earlier today, it won't take us over the impervious coverage, so we can actually do a 7th paved parking space on the right side where that gravel driveway is, if the board would prefer us to do that. So we're fully prepared to do that. I will have our engineer and planner discuss the variances. The plans that we have submitted are the site plan dated April 8th of this year, prepared by Mantera Design LLC. We submitted the survey by ClearPoint Services dated March 11th of this year, along with some site photographs. And we also submitted the floor plans for the existing dwelling, as well as the elevations. And those plans were prepared by Eric Schultz and were dated March 4th of this year. Our witnesses tonight will be Giovanni Manilio, who is our engineer, and Paul Gleitz, who is our planner. We do have a representative of our client here who can answer any questions should the board have any for them. But if I may, I would begin with Mr. Manilio.
Yes, Council, Mr. Chairman and board members, I did mark the application as it was submitted A1 for the record. That includes the photographs and the supportive materials from the applicant. A2 is the site plan reference from the engineer that consists of 2 sheets. A3 are the architectural drawings or the architectural variance plan that consisted of 8 sheets, and then A4 is the reference, the 1-sheet survey. So we have A1 through A4 in the record. Can I ask the witness if he can hear me? This is Rob Pansula, the board attorney. Can I ask you to raise your right hand and swear or affirm that the testimony you provide this evening is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
And for the record, if you could state and spell your name with your affiliation.
Sure. First name is Giovanni, Giovanni. Last name Manilio, Manilio. And I'm president of Mantaro Design, the civil engineer that prepared the plans for the project.
Thank you.
And Mr. Minilio, could you state your qualifications for the board?
Sure. So a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering from Syracuse University. I've been licensed in the state of New Jersey for the past 16 years and it's still in good standing. Testified in front of numerous boards throughout the state.
We'll accept his credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Minilio, you prepared the site plan and the accompanying drawings?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe for the board this site as it currently exists?
Sure. I just need a minute here for this to load. All right. So what I'm referring to is the plan set that was submitted as part of the application. I'm going to go start with the first sheet. On the left side is the existing conditions. So as described earlier, the property is in the RB zone on Oswald Place. The property is rectangular in shape, about 84 feet wide and approximately 70 feet deep, with a lot area of 5,847.7 square feet. Currently, the property is surrounded by other residential uses, and it's a mixture of uses on that street. You have single families, 2 families, and I believe there is also 1 fourth family that's further down the street as you get closer to Laurel Ave. Oswald Place is a one-way street as you go traveling south down Oswald Place, with parking on the opposite side of the street. Currently, the property consists of a 4-story or 4-family structure. It consists of 3 one-bedroom units and 1 two-bedroom unit. As described earlier, on the south side of the dwelling is an existing gravel driveway that could hold approximately 2 vehicles. In front of the dwelling is a covered porch and an open porch, and in the rear of the dwelling is a concrete patio with a 2nd floor deck. There are several pre-existing nonconformities for the site. One of them being the use itself. 4-family is presently at the site, where a maximum of a 2-family is permitted as far as a use for residential. There is a pre-existing nonconformity for lot depth. 100 feet is required for a lot depth. This lot is 69.62 feet. Front yard setback, 25 feet is required for the zone. The current conditions, the house is set back 9.9 feet from the front property line. And maximum building height. Per the zoning regulations, a maximum building height of 32 feet is permitted, where the existing house is 35.62 feet. And as we'll testify later, there's really no changes to the nonconformities as far as the use and the dimensions of the lot. I'll refer to the right side of the same sheet, which is the proposed development. So what we're proposing to build is a 6-car parking lot or driveway. It's a glorified driveway. It's going to be a parking lot. And it's located on the north side of the dwelling. Will be 3 spaces with tandem parking. I know there was a comment from the board engineer as far as how that would work and how that be policed. Speaking with the applicant, those spaces, one in front of each other, would be assigned to a tenant, and that would be written in the lease. So that's how that will function. Per RSIS, 7 total spaces are required based on the bedroom count. In our original proposal, we had shown 6 spaces. I do want to introduce a new exhibit, if it's okay with the board and with the council. It's
Yeah,
entitled-
noted A5 for the record if it's a new exhibit.
Sure, so it's entitled 281, 283 Oswald Place, site exhibit with today's date. And the modifications are shown here in red. When we did the application, I'm not sure why we proposed 6 spaces instead of the conforming 7 spaces. I think we thought at the time it was going to be an issue with lot coverage, but since then, we were trying to eliminate a variance. So we think we could add or keep one of the spaces on the south side of the property, shown in red, and the space would be about 9 by 22. There's an existing curb cut there, and it would conform with the regulations as far as number of curb cuts along the frontage, as we have a distance of about 45 feet between the frontage, the curb cuts, where I think 35 feet is required. And that will provide the 7th space, and that will bring it into conformance with the requirements per RSIS, and it would still be in conformance with the lot coverage. So originally, the lot coverage that was proposed as part of the original application proposed 53.7% coverage. With this modification, it would increase to 57.1% coverage, and the ordinance permits a maximum of 60%. So we're still below the coverage by about 3%. The only detriment to keeping the space is that the design waivers that we are asking will be intensified a little bit by keeping this parking here. And I'll go through those design waivers next. As far as design waivers, there's technically 5 of them, but they fall under two separate sections of the ordinance. The first has to do with the tandem parking. As mentioned earlier, tandem parking is not permitted where you're supposed to have a parking space, can't be blocked by another car. In this situation, we are proposing the tandem parking. And again, I think that could be alleviated by putting in the lease and assigning it to the tenants.
Just to clarify on that point, so each of the stacked areas, they're going to be, the front and the back will be assigned to one unit.
Correct.
So to be similar to like a single-family home that has a single-width driveway.
That is correct. Very similar. And then the other, I'm going to group the other design waivers together, have to do with location of the parking. So the way the ordinance is written, if you're a 1 or 2 family dwelling, there's different requirements for parking in driveways. This is technically a 4 family, so it has to comply with the commercial regulations in the town. And with that being said, so parking has to be 10 feet from any property line, from any building, and from any residential zone and any street. So what we're proposing with the proposed parking lot or driveway is a distance of 4.8 feet, shown right here, from parking to the dwelling. And then with the proposed 7th space, that distance would be 0.7 feet, which is currently present today with the gravel driveway that's there. So there's no difference in the setback there. The next 2 have to do with the distance from a side property line. So 2.9 feet is proposed on the driveway to the left, both for the property line and to the residential zone, which the whole property is in a residential zone. And then on the right side, it's a 0.5 setback to the property line and to the residential zone. Currently today, the gravel driveway actually goes over the property line a little bit, so that'll be cleaned up and contained on the site wholly. And lastly, the requirement is that parking has to be 10 feet from a street. So measuring from where we have the striping or the parking space, both on the left and right side, that would be 6.8 feet, where 10 feet is required. Again, if the board feels strongly, I believe we can still push it further into the site a little bit and still conform with the site requirements as far as lot coverage.
If I could just direct your attention to the reports that we received.
Sure.
We did receive reports from the police and fire. Both of those indicated that there were no comments. And then with regard to the Collier's report, which is dated August 27th, I believe you've already addressed the design waivers. Section 2, grading and drainage.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So on the second sheet of the plan set that was submitted, we did have a grading plan. So discuss the grading. So there's very minor modifications to the grading in order to build the driveway or parking area. And there's no change to the drainage patterns. The way the site is graded, from the back to the front, everything drains towards Oswald Place and not to any of the neighbors. We don't see any issues with that and no change in the drainage.
Now, we do have the neighbor who, if you're standing looking at the house, the property to the left, that neighbor's here tonight and had voiced some concerns earlier about drainage and how it might affect their property. Could you give them some reassurances?
Yeah, so as far as runoff coming onto your site, there should be actually no increase in runoff coming to your site. As everything drains, and I don't know if you could follow my mouse, but from this corner of the site, everything drains diagonally towards Oswald Place and then down the street.
Okay. And item 2.2, we will comply with that, correct?
That is correct.
Item 3, you've already addressed. Item 4.1, you've addressed. Item 4.2, we will comply with that as well.
Yes, we will.
And we will also comply with all of the articles under Article 5, correct?
Yes, we will.
Thank you. I think that's all I have for Mr. Manilio.
Are there any board members that would like to question the testimony of Mr. Manilio?
I do. I do have a question looking at his grading plan. Well, first, are you looking to curb around this proposed parking lot?
As of right now, no, we're not proposing any curbing.
Because when I'm looking at the way your point contours, it looks like it's flowing toward the adjacent property. Go to your grading plan,
Yep, right.
to the right.
Oh,
Right.
on the existing.
Yeah, no, keep going. Yeah, this plan.
Oh, so that's the lighting plan, that's not a grading plan.
Oh, this is not a grading plan.
No, that's the lighting. So we are, I probably should mention that, we are proposing one light on the existing building on the north side, and that's in full
Oh, so
compliance.
these are foot candles that I'm.
Those are foot candles, so at the property line, you can see the .1
Okay.
foot candles, which is meets the
Okay.
requirements for the, yeah, so this is the grading plan right here. And the thick lines are the contours.
So it's all coming down.
Yep.
Okay.
Can I just note for the record, too, you'll do some cooperative follow-up with Colliers, especially because there is a change proposed on the right side. I know it's different, but I assume that doesn't have any impact or drainage impact, and I'm not sure about what you're going to do to pave that or keep it gravel or what some of those details are going to be. But if I could just note for the record, the board acts favorably, that we'll make sure that Colliers weighs in on the layout for that right side as well as dealing with the proposal for the 6 spaces on the left.
Yes, understood.
Are there any other board members that would like to question this witness?
One other question, and this is concerning the gravel, existing gravel. You said you have to clean it up because I guess it kind of spreads out into the adjacent property. Again, has any consideration been given to placing curbing on that side to contain not only, well, you're going to pave it, but to confine that edge of paving so nothing goes over to the adjacent property?
Yeah, no, I don't think we were proposing curbing. I mean, if anywhere, I think that side would make the most sense compared to the other side of the property. So if the board seems favorable, we have no issues putting curbing on the one side along the property line. And that would contain it, and I think that would keep the cars on the property instead of going off the property as well. Yeah. And
Well, I think I'll label that as part of the cooperative follow-up with Colliers as
Sure.
well, because maybe as long as the grade, and certainly to make sure the neighbors are okay with their concern, that the township engineer could assure the grading will allow the flow away from their property, because it's a legitimate concern for a lot that's currently undeveloped. So whether curbing would be a recommended result or not, it seems to me it wouldn't be unless there was a concern about the flow. And as long as the grade is going to do what you're saying, at least that cooperative follow-up with the township engineer, for the benefit of the neighbor as much as anything, will assure that we can do what we can to make sure they don't have a problem.
Yeah, we have no issues with that. And as far as grading, yeah, I don't believe anything is going to the neighbor's properties. Everything's still going to Oswald on that side, but we have no issues working with your board engineer.
Are there any other questions? Hearing none, are there any members of the public that would like to question the testimony this witness has provided? Hearing none, Counselor, your next witness?
That would be our planner, Paul Gleitz.
Good evening, this is Rob Pansul, the Board Attorney. Can I ask you to swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide this evening is the truth and the whole truth?
I do.
And for the record, state and spell your name with your business affiliation.
Paul Gleitz, Paul-Gleitz. I'm a principal at L&G Planning.
Thank you.
And Mr. Gleitz, would you state your qualifications for the board?
Certainly, I'm a graduate of the Blaustein School at Rutgers University with a master's degree in city and regional planning. I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm also a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners, and my membership's up to date in both. I've been serving in private practice for about 20 years.
The board will accept his credentials.
Thank you.
So, I think you have a pretty good idea what the project is. I think you have a pretty good idea what we're looking to do here. I won't run through all of that. I do want to just for some context, we're at 281-283 Oswald, again, block 5811, lot 143. We have just under 6,000 square feet. Here's the surrounding neighborhood. This is essentially the RB zone. We have Oswald, and we have Carnegie, we have Oregon, we have Hilton running in that northeast, southwest direction. The top of the zone is Laurel Ave, and north of that is Maplewood, and then we have Hilton Ave, and then Springfield Ave to the north is higher order streets. The zone is the RB zone, residential two-family. The purpose is to permit two-family housing to meet a wide range of housing needs and desires for the union residents. One-family, two-family, multi-family dwellings in the RC, public parks and public buildings are permitted. There's a number of conditional uses, places of assembly, public and private schools, and accessory dwelling units in the RA and the RB zone. The existing use is a pre-existing non-conforming four-family dwelling, and will continue to do that in the proposed. The surrounding uses to the north, and again, what I'll do is here's kind of a closer look at our property here. To the north, we have 293 Oswald. To the south, we have 275 to 271 Oswald, which is a two-family. To the east, we have 276, 282, and 292. They are a mix of two-family and one-family zones on the opposite side of the street. On this side, to the east, two-family and one-families mixed on this side. To the west, we have 286 and 288 Oswald, which is a two-family, and 274 Oswald, which is a single-family. Beyond that, as you saw, we have a mix of mixed-density residential, some churches, fraternal organizations, and some small offices. So our variance, so that gives you kind of an idea, and again, I'll go down to from the opposite viewpoint, here's the opposite side of Oswald Place here, with Hilton beyond, and then Carnegie behind, with the two-family behind, and a mix of singles and twos. We're seeking a D2 expansion of a non-conforming use variance for the construction of the parking lot. And to be clear, we are not increasing the size of the building itself. We are 4, we're staying at 4. There's no physical changes being made to the building itself, but the provision of this parking area is what triggers this expansion of the use. As I go through kind of my technical testimony, I just want the board to remember that we're really improving the situation. We're going from a situation where there was 1 substandard parking spot for the site to 7 standard parking spots on the site. Street parking in that area is at a premium. It is a one-way street, it is a narrow street. So even though we need some relief, in the back of your minds, I hope you can agree that we really are improving the situation on the site. There was some discussion about a D6 height variance for the building. The engineer called it out as a pre-existing bulk variance for the site. I can get into that a little bit later. And again, as the engineer stated, we have pre-existing nonconformities in terms of lot depth, front yard setback. The engineer went through the design waivers for the parking. And again, we had a discussion about whether we need a parking variance or not. I think we could either, if we want to add that additional 7th parking space, we would be fully compliant and not need a parking variance. I've reviewed your master plan. It's an impressive document. It's congratulations on such a, forward-thinking and, well-developed master plan. There was a couple of notes in the introduction I thought related to the proposal. One of the overarching ideas for the town and the master plan is attractive housing for all ages and interests. And one of the findings was that, new housing is multifamily in character, and there have been more multifamily versus single-family building permits pulled in the last few years. And my testimony is going to be a mix about the four-family, the four-family home, because that's what's technically, quote-unquote, being expanded, but it's really just the parking. So I'm going to have a little bit of mix of your master plan documents in support of this multifamily housing to continue, and then a little bit of my planning about the parking, so you can understand why it's kind of a mixed bag here. We're not expanding the house itself or adding new units. Under your smart growth principles, you recognize the need for a range of housing opportunities and choices. And then under parking in the residential districts, especially in the two-family districts, land uses should be able to accommodate vehicles safely and sufficiently on site, and property owners should be able to provide sufficient parking to accommodate most, if not all, users. And then under goals and objectives within the land use plan, one of them that relates back to the application here is maintaining the character of existing residential neighborhoods while providing opportunities for housing types that meet the interest and needs of all ages and abilities. And two of the sub-goals under this were the preserve the integrity of established single-family and two-family home neighborhoods by preventing intrusion of more intense uses and recognizing the viability of a need for alternatives to single-family houses, two-family and other housing configurations in existing neighborhoods, and as a part of redevelopment should be continued where this will not undermine other objectives. And again, another goal was to provide adequate parking to serve established residential and commercial activities. And incorporate adequate parking into developments. So I think that's a good overview of the master plan elements that relate to the proposal before you. So I'm going to go through the D2 expansion of a nonconforming use. The courts have found that similar to a conditional use, pre-existing nonconforming uses don't need the enhanced proofs you often hear for a direct D1 use variance. The courts have found you don't need to have the enhanced proofs of Medici in terms of particular suitability or master plan reconciliation. They don't need to be met. D2 variance may be found, in fact, that the variance granted would tend to minimize the nonconformity and make it more acceptable in the particular setting. There's also been a number of cases that apply to the D2 variance. Cole versus Fairlawn was one that it found that the expansion variance does not bear the much higher burden of proving the underlying operation itself would be approved under a new use variance. Kingwood v. Board of Adjustment talked about how the negative criteria could be seen more liberally than in a traditional use variance. And in Burbidge versus Mine Hill, the finding was that overall site improvements and overall improvements to the non-conforming use could meet the burden for special reasons. What I'd like to do then, but with any of these variances, we have to present the positive and the negative. So I'll do that, I think, under the positive criteria. In terms of the general welfare, in terms of advancing the purposes of zoning under the municipal land use law. Purpose G, which is to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of agricultural, residential, recreational, commercial, and industrial uses in open space, both public and private, according to their respective environmental requirements, in order to meet the needs of all New Jersey citizens. And I think the facts of the case that support this purpose of zoning is that this pre-existing residential lot use has been in existence prior to local zoning. Your current land development code was adopted by the committee in August of 2022, and the history of land development code amendments date back to 1982. The site was first developed as a storefront with residential above in 1923. And since then, the property has been recognized by the zoning officer as a pre-existing non-conforming 4-unit residential dwelling and is taxed as a 4-family unit. there was a memo issued March 9th, 2022, that I think was part of the record. If not, I think you wanted to have that submitted.
Yeah, if we could, we may have submitted this with the application, but perhaps if we can mark this as A6, I believe.
The aerial that you were showing, that's part of a planner's exhibit, so that wasn't part of the original site plan, was it? What you
No,
just-
those were just Google images.
How many were there? There are 2 images?
There's 5 total.
5, let's,
I've shown 3 so far.
here, let's collectively put that as a planner's aerial exhibit as A6, and then we'll do A7, the separate exhibit of the zoning officer's
So
letter.
here's the memo I'm referring to that was issued to the property owner. It's considered residential 2-family zone. The property is being taxed as a 4-family. Also, we know that the property is pre-existing non-conforming and would need board approval if the property were fully destroyed. So, just add that as additional information. Multifamily residential buildings provide an affordable option for many families. The existing neighborhood is a mix of 1 and 2 families and structures of varying sizes. There is a 4-family unit further up near the top of Oswald Place. The existing structure is not out of scale with the surrounding neighborhood and is not being enlarged. And 3 and 4 unit residentials represent 5 to 6% of your total housing types throughout the township. The provision of adequate on-site parking will improve the property, bring it closer to zoning conformance, and will alleviate impacts to on-street parking in the neighborhood. It's a better outcome overall for the neighborhood. All of the bulk variances are pre-existing, and the bulk standards that address the intensity of use, such as lot size, building coverage, number of stories, and impervious lot coverage, are all compliant to the zone standards. So this is a building that fits in well. It has fit well in the community for a very long time, and there's no overall change to the structure. We're simply improving the parking situation. Additionally, under Purpose H is to encourage the location design of transportation routes which will promote the free flow of traffic while discouraging locations of such facilities that would result in congestion and blight. So again, providing the proposed on-site parking will reduce demand for on-street parking in the immediate vicinity and will hopefully improve the free flow of traffic on Oswald Place. The engineer's memo states that there's 1 building with no on-site parking available. Occupants are required to park on an already busy Oswald Terrace, a one-way street. And then similarly, I think you could find that the application promotes the general welfare in terms of promoting the zoning purposes of your own township master plan, which I just reviewed with you, in terms of maintaining character of the existing residential neighborhoods and providing adequate parking to serve established residential and commercial areas. Now I'm going to move on to the negative criteria. And again, the case law says the board can consider these a little more liberally than you would with a use variance, a D1 use variance. In terms of impact on the public good, the site has been developed as the existing use for decades. The site has accommodated the existing use on the site for years and will now function even better with the proposed parking improvements. The surrounding residential uses have existed in some other form or another adjacent to the site for decades as well. This mix of single families and 2-family homes is not substantially impacted by the existing use, and the neighborhood will be improved by the proposed improvements. And the proposed parking area does not create any additional variances. The lot will remain conforming in terms of lot size, building coverage, stories, and impervious lot coverage. The other bulk variants are pre-existing nonconformities relating to the existing structure. And again, we also have to address any impacts to the zone plan. I think you can find that the proposal advances multiple goals in the master plan as I went through them, and is a pre-existing non-conforming use that has existed for a long time in the neighborhood. So we're not negatively impacting any of the other purposes of your master plan. Real briefly, I think I have some testimony about the D6 height variance. I don't think, the engineer called it out as a simple bulk variance. It's a pre-existing non-conforming situation. So I'll leave it at that. Just if, again, under one interpretation, the threshold for the height variance is an exceedance of the maximum building height by 10%. That zone standard is 32 feet. The existing structure is 35.26, so that would be up the permissible, within a bulk variance range, would be up to 35.2. So the existing structure exceeds that by 0.06, which is 0.72, less than an inch, 0.7 of an inch. So I think the engineer kind of rounded down and called it a de minimis impact and consider that a bulk variance instead, which
I
is
think similar to the use too, I can note for the record the testimony that there's going to be no change to the structure, so that literally is pre-existing and legally conforming
correct.
because it's there and it's not being changed. It's really a modification on the lot due to the parking.
And my prior testimony on the D2 variance would flow through to the D6 as well. Under the C1 variances, we have the lot depth, the front yard setback, and if we don't add the 7th parking space, we'd have a parking variance. These are all pre-existing nonconformities with the site that have existed for decades. If you're required compliance at this time, it would be a hardship because there's no available land to add to the property to remedy the lot depth, and you'd have to demolish or lift the building and move it on site to address the front yard setback. And then the parking variance is being reduced from a deficit of 6 spaces to a deficit of 1 or even a deficit of 0. And so it's a vast improvement over the current condition and can be supported by the board. And I think we heard the discussion about adding the extra space. So that's all my direct testimony.
Thank you. That's all we have for Mr. Gleitz.
Are there any board members that would like to question Mr. Galitz?
I do have a quick question. I just wanted to make sure that there's a fence in the back, correct? That's not,
Is the fence shown on the?
It's in the photos that are part of the application materials. It's in pretty bad condition. We just didn't know if it
that
was,
was your client's fence or the neighbor's?
I believe it's the client's fence, the property owner's fence.
I don't know.
no, we have to swear her in if she's going to testify. If this witness doesn't know.
Do you want to come forward, ma'am? Well, before we
Let's finish with the planner first.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are there any board members that will, any other questions of Mr. Galitz's testimony? Hearing none. Are there any members of the public that would like to question the testimony this witness has provided? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Counselor, would you like to call up the applicant?
Yes. This is Wendy Few. She is actually the mother of the applicant.
Can I ask you to swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to provide is the truth and the whole truth?
Yes,
Thank you. And just for the record, state and spell your name.
Wendy Fu. Wendy, W-E-N-D-Y, last name F-U.
Thank you.
Wendy, there was a question about the fence along the rear property line. Do you know if that belongs to you or does it belong to the neighbor?
Right now, there's a two, it's a back and pipe. One is belong to the neighbors, one is belong to me. So there's a very, very little gap, but it's near.
Okay, let me just,
So there's a two, I should say, one is chain link, one is wood. So
Ms. Fu, would you speak into the microphone? Thank you.
wood belong to the back neighbor, chain link belong to
okay.
the front. So there's two, but the between has the gap.
Okay,
That answered my question, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. At this time, I'll open it up to the public. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on this application? Hearing none, Counselor, would you like to sum up?
Just very briefly, I certainly don't want to repeat all the testimony you've already heard. We believe the application is pretty straightforward, and it does present benefits, and we don't see any real significant detriment. The addition of the parking area certainly gives the occupants a place to park. It reduces street and other off-site parking demands, and as was mentioned by your board engineer, this is a one-way street. It's a very busy street, and parking is at a premium. So we think this is a benefit not only to the property, but to the neighbors as well, and to the community as a whole. The D2 variance is really the only new variance that we're asking for. The other variances, we are not expanding those in any way, shape, or form. They are pre-existing conditions. We feel the site is adequate in size to accommodate this, and for all of the reasons stated, we do think that there are special reasons, and there's not any substantial detriment. So we would ask that you consider granting the application.
And just for the record, counsel, the only two conditions I noted were the follow-up cooperatively with Colliers as the engineer to assure the grade and the possibility of curbing. It may not be necessary as long as the grade will alleviate any concern that the neighboring property has about water flow, number one. And then number two, the testimony went in that there's going to be assigned use to alleviate problems with the tandem, because you have 4 units and 6 spaces. The numbers don't mesh, so it's really going to behoove the owner to deal with the residents to have a system in play. If you're the one coming home from the night shift and the person that you're blocking is leaving at 6 a.m., just like you'd use any driveway, that she's going to deal with that issue. You're not going to have people parking on the sidewalk or in areas where they shouldn't overhang or be parked. So those are the two conditions that I noted.
Yep, I noted those as well, and I agree with you on the assignment of the parking.
And the board, Mr. Chairman, should just deliberate and consider the 7th space that's now proposed. That is different than what was proposed. It does not generate a new variance because the lot coverage is satisfied in proposing it that way. It will require follow-up with Mr. Hatterer's office just on the paving of it, as it were. But it is new, and it does cure the variance as to the number of spaces, so there is a benefit to that. So, as you deliberate, I would just say if you're for adding that 7th space, since it's new.
Well, can we conference that right now? Would a yes or a no? Ms. Ricketts, are you in favor of the 7th spot? 7th space?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Martins?
Yes.
Mr. Wiley?
Mr. Chairman,
No, we're not commenting on the, we're not conferencing the application. We're just a yes or no on the 7th parking spot.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. McNeil? Okay, so we all agree on that. I myself am in favor of that 7th parking spot.
I think the board can deliberate, Gary.
Yes. Ms. Ricketts, would you like to start this evening?
Sure. Thank you all for coming and basically showing us the plans, and this is actually a really good thing because it does help that street, taking cars off the road, so I go yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see no detriment to the neighborhood. In fact, it's going to get cars off the street, which is going to help the neighborhood and be a safety factor also. And as long as they follow up with the township engineer, I will be voting that yes.
Ms. Martins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am in favor of this application. I'm well aware of the street and the property as well. I think this is positive for both the neighborhood and for the property, so I'll be voting yes.
Mr. McNeil?
I would agree with my colleagues. I mean, the application is very straightforward. The improvement is actually a benefit by adding existing additional parking and relieving some of the congestion in that area. Being a frequent traveler through that block, it will definitely be a benefit, so I intend to vote yes.
Ms. Scott?
Good evening. Yes, I concur with my colleagues. I thought that the application was also a very straightforward application. I think the planner did an excellent job in conveying to us exactly what we were, dealing with. And the board's attorney already brought up the fact that managing how the parking would actually be. I think that's important because you don't want to be that person that comes and cannot park in your assigned spot.
Right. Mr. Wiley?
yes, Mr. Chairman, I agree with my colleagues. I think the site is adequate for the street here is very tight, so there's very good need for parking in the parking lot. Reduce some of the need on the street, so I'm gonna vote yes.
As for myself, this is a good application, I feel. We all know, as Mr. Wiley stated, that the parking is very tight in that area. Therefore, the variances are justified by showing that the proposed improvements will not have a negative impact on the property or the neighboring property owners. Therefore, I too will vote yes for this application. At this time, may I have a motion and a second to grant the application?
Mr. Chairman, I move the board grant the variance applicable to this application and that council is directed to prepare a resolution consistent with the board's decision.
Second motion.
May I have a roll call?
Mr. Wiley,
Yes.
Ms. Martins,
Yes.
Scott,
Yes.
Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. McNeil,
Yes.
Ms. Ricketts,
Yes.
Mr. Champion.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
May I have a
October 9th, the council will have the resolution on the agenda to be passed. October
Terrific.
9th. I'll send you a copy ahead of time.
May I have a motion and a second?
Mr. Chairman, there being no further business coming before the board this evening, I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.